So watch if you dare. But now on Yorkshire we join ITN for the latest world news.
Good evening, this is the news from ITN. The headlines tonight. Fierce fighting in Croatia, but in Geneva they're still talking peace. Now the Americans say Iraq may not have fired at all in the latest bombing raid. A last farewell to Audrey Hepburn, Hollywood's fair lady. And Spurs sweep past Norwich to reach the 5th round of the FA Cup. Fierce fighting continued today in Croatia and Bosnia as the politicians struggled to find a solution to the deepening crisis. They were talking peace in Geneva as Croatian troops advanced in the Serb-populated enclave of Krajina, seizing a village under the gaze of UN peacekeepers. Tonight, the Yugoslav Deputy Prime Minister said over 600 Serbs had been killed in the fighting, most of them civilians.
Croatian forces prepared to push forward their offensive in Krajina. 12 months of peace destroyed in the last 48 hours. The role of the UN force there exposed as ineffective. This village fell to the Croatians this afternoon. Serbian sources in the region claim that they are facing 18 divisions, around 20,000 of these men, but there's no independent confirmation. Serb leaders say that the Croatians are trying to sabotage the peace talks. They also claim that the Croatian Air Force and warships have been bombing and shelling their positions. These new clashes are on last year's battlegrounds. Serbs seized this area of Croatia known as Krajina. They're due to hand some of the land back under UN supervision. Neighbouring Bosnia, the subject of the Geneva talks, will, if they're successful, be carved into separate provinces based on ethnic majorities. The mood in Geneva has been matched by the worsening situation in Croatia and further fighting in Bosnia.
We think that these offensives, both Croatian and Muslims, are designed in order to ruin this conference. So we are not going to leave conference, although we should.
We urged the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia and the Bosnian Serbs leaders not to get involved in Croatia at all. They did express a readiness not to get involved, to leave it to the United Nations.
If these fresh outbreaks of violence can be brought to a halt, then there's no reason why these talks can't redivert back to their original theme of finding a peaceful settlement. Colin Baker, ITN, Geneva.
The United States now says it's possible that Iraq did not fire at all last night when American warplanes bombed Iraqi artillery. The new American Defense Secretary Les Aspin said it was too early to tell if President Saddam Hussein had broken his self-declared truce. Mr. Aspin said there was some indication that Iraq was moving anti-aircraft missiles back into the southern no-fly zone, but this had not been confirmed.
It's the third time since the change of president in America that US planes have bombed Iraq.
Anyone who wants to watch the football match, video will start in 5 minutes.
Let's all give us the video.
With any prisoner willing to...
Attacked two sites last week in the northern no-fly zone after being targeted by Iraqi radar. Last night's incident was in the southern zone, but the exact location's not been revealed. Iraq says America's lying. Saddam Hussein's Command Council claims its forces are still holding their fire and that the American bombings are unprovoked. In his first days in office, President Clinton's insisting US forces will continue to respond to aggression. Iraq has radar-guided anti-aircraft guns which move in and out of the no-fly zones. If Saddam Hussein is using them to test American resolve, he may soon discover how tough President Clinton's prepared to be.
Indian police have uncovered a plot by Sikh militants to bomb Tuesday's National Day celebration, which John Major is due to attend. 4 men have been arrested. Officials say Mr. Major was not the target. In Delhi today, Mr. Major rejected opposition criticism of his trip abroad. He also played down reports of cabinet infighting over the future of Britain's coal industry.
Very well indeed, thank you. Stung by criticism of his visit to India, Mr. Major's anxious to show something positive from the trip. He believes the attacks are misguided, since he hopes he can boost Britain's £1 billion of exports to India.
We have a huge trade flow with India, but the capacity for increasing that is dramatic. exports abroad mean jobs at home.
But at home, he's left a cabinet split over whether to provide subsidies to keep coal pits open. Was Mr. Heseltine isolated in a ministerial squabble?
The cabinet are discussing a whole series of options. One man's squabble is another man's discussion. I think it's entirely proper for the cabinet to discuss these matters and discuss them in detail, and that is what's happening.
But any subsidy to keep pits open will have to have a limited duration if the Prime Minister's to heal the rift in his cabinet. But while Mr. Major may privately welcome a breather from pressing problems at home, the value of his trip here won't become evident for some months. Only then will it become clear whether or not the British businessmen who've accompanied him have signed the contracts they want with India. Tonight, in a piece of prime ministerial salesmanship, Mr. Major pressed the case for increased trade with Britain. Deals worth tens of millions of pounds are in the balance. He hopes his efforts will tip them Britain's way. Mark Webster, ITN, Delhi.
The government will try to calm fears that the new national lottery will mean the loss of thousands of jobs in the pools industry. The lottery bill gets its second reading tomorrow. Today, the National Heritage Secretary Peter Brook said there was nothing to stop pools companies from making a bid to run the lottery.
The claim by the pools industry that thousands of jobs will be lost if the national lottery goes ahead has yet to convince the government. They are pressing ahead with the bill unchanged. The Heritage Secretary says the pools companies can bid to run the lottery themselves.
They would be entirely entitled to bid. The bill will set up, the Act will set up a regulator who will run the lottery, will manage it, regulate it, monitor it, and he will have the job of appointing the lottery operator, and it would be totally appropriate for the pools to bid if they wish to.
But the pools companies say lotteries, like this one in California, employ far fewer people. They're more concerned the national lottery should not have an unfair advantage by being able, for instance, to advertise on television when they can't.
Until we have a bill which makes sure that the competition between pools and lottery is on fair and level terms, it is much too early to talk about who is going to be running the lottery. Because the thing we are certain about of the lottery is the number of people involved is something like 200.
The Labour Party are divided on the issue. They've tabled an amendment for tomorrow's debate in the Commons calling for safeguards to protect jobs. If, as expected, that fails, Labour MPs will be allowed a free vote for or against a national lottery. Good Matthias, ITN, Westminster.
Forensic scientists have developed a new technique to help police trap ram raiders. It's gone on trial in Staffordshire, where police are using it to track down the thieves and their stolen goods.
These raiders were filmed by security cameras, but in future they risk being caught by the police's newest forensic trap, an invisible dye sprayed through a shop sprinkler system, providing them with indelible evidence. It can't be seen under natural light, but as this reconstruction shows under specialised lighting, the proof is plain to see. Within the dye, a forensic fingerprint made up specially for each shop. Similar to DNA, the stain on the stolen goods matching exactly the dye on the offender.
It's a mild form of psychological warfare, because they have to take the risk that if they go into an index shop, that sometime in the future the police, if they're arrested, can place them back at the scene of the burglary, at the time of the burglary.
More and more in the police, we have to rely upon technology. We use closed-circuit television cameras and many other innovations. This is probably the newest innovation that we've used, and we expect it to have a significant impact upon this type of crime.
Undercover use in Staffordshire has led to several arrests. Police hope the dye will prove invaluable, not just in detection, but in crime prevention. Anya Sitharam, ITN, Staffordshire.
Aid agencies have appealed for urgent international action to help tens of thousands of Muslims fleeing civil war with communists in the former Soviet Republic of Tajikistan. Around 1,000 refugees a day are arriving at makeshift camps in neighbouring Afghanistan. Many are dying in the bitter cold. This report from Eric McInnes at ITN.
The Afghan military have the job of ferrying the latest group of Tajik refugees from the border area. This joint UN Oxfam camp now houses some 20,000 people dispossessed by the civil war raging in their own country. They arrive with little, scarcely prepared for the bitter cold and barren conditions which greet them. 500,000 Tajiks are estimated to have been driven from their homes in the conflict between Muslims and communists. Some 60,000 of those are now trying to stay alive on these desolate plains. They dig their temporary shelters out of the ground, using plastic for roofs and walls. At night, the temperatures fall to 15 below. 50 children died in just 1 week. The charity Oxfam, who took these pictures, say efforts are being made by the people themselves to better their lot. The conditions are still primitive. The cold weather will be the biggest test. An Oxfam plane has recently arrived in North Afghanistan with 90 bales of winter clothing from Britain. But it's reported the authorities are now trying to limit the numbers of people arriving here. There are fears that Muslim resistance fighters could try to use the camps as bases from which to wage war on the Tajikistan pro-communist government. But the refugees are still coming. This camp will soon be overcrowded, and the problems don't stop here. There are still thousands of other refugees camped in the border mountains in urgent need of further aid.
Rick McInnes reporting. 3 British actresses are celebrating after winning Golden Globe Film Awards at a ceremony in Hollywood. Emma Thompson was named Best Actress in a Drama Film for her role in Howard's End, which could now put her in line for an Oscar. Miranda Richardson was named Best Musical or Comedy Film Actress for Enchanted April, and Joan Plowright won Best Supporting Actress for the same film. Friends and colleagues of the actress Audrey Hepburn bid her farewell today. They joined hundreds of local people at her funeral in the small Swiss village where she'd lived. Tributes were paid to her work helping children in the Third World, to which she devoted the last years of her life.
Audrey Hepburn had returned from her hospital in America to spend the last months of her life at home in Switzerland. She had chosen the village church of Tolashona for her funeral, and it was a small gathering there today. Her 2 sons, her family and her friends. There were few faces from her days as a young star in Hollywood. Among them the actor Mel Ferrer, who became her first husband, and an old friend, Roger Moore.
She was a great friend and a great worker for UNICEF and a great colleague.
In the short service, she was remembered by the village priest for her work with the United Nations, helping children in Somalia and around the world. Her son Sean said she had believed love could heal and fix and mend everything. But for her fans, it was the films they remembered and the elegant film star.
She was a very simple woman. A great woman, I think. Fantastic actress. The best, really.
Her legacy, the film classics like My Fair Lady and Roman Holiday, will make Audrey Hepburn a favourite loved by generations of moviegoers to come. Louise Osmond, ITN, Lausanne in Switzerland.
And now football, and Spurs are through to the 5th round of the FA Cup after beating Norwich with 2 goals in 3 minutes. They'll now meet Aston Villa or Wimbledon. The favourites, Manchester United, were drawn to take on Sheffield United. Tom Bradby reports on today's action.
Nobody has a better FA Cup record than Tottenham, and just after half-time, Teddy Sheringham showed why. After that, Spurs began to run away with the game. Sheringham again minutes later. Teddy Sheringham seemed out to defy his critics, combining brilliantly with Barmby and only just missing a hat-trick. The giant-killing honours of the day belong to Bolton, proving against Wolves their defeat of Liverpool at Anfield was no fluke. Andy Walker here feeding Scott Green for some precise finishing.
And that's the news tonight from all of us on the weekend team. Good night.
Hello, good evening as we go into yet another night of very disturbed weather indeed. In fact, with the area north of roundabout North Wales taking a real pounding, what with gale force winds and snow blizzards just to add to all the difficulties. Now, structural damage is bound to occur and driving conditions will prove hazardous. Now, here's the reason why. We've high pressure out here to the west, low pressure in the North Sea, and look at these virtually straight lines representing the northerlies howling all the way down from the pole and blasting across the country. Now we can confirm tonight's weather. It's snow showers in the north and west, 1 or 2 slipping across to the east and down as far south as the Midlands. And these temperatures themselves mightn't look too dramatic, but when you add on those winds, severe gale force winds at times, it'll feel horribly cold. So as we go into tomorrow, those snow showers continually, mainly in the north and west, and 1 or 2 spilling down the eastern side of the country, with the very best of the dry weather reserved for sheltered areas like South Wales, southern counties and the central lowlands. Now 2 things happen during the day. These showers tend to dry off, but we already see the next batch of snow slipping into the very far northwest of Scotland. Temperatures prove academic, what with us howling northerly winds, the message being wrap up warm. I leave you with a reminder of tonight's bitter winds.
Another very windy night is in store in our region, with northwesterly winds reaching severe gale force at times. Added to that, there will be bands of showers rushing across the region, which will turn increasingly wintry, with snow down to all levels and some drifting over the hills. Temperatures will fall to around 0 centigrade, 32 Fahrenheit, and with the very strong winds, that will add up to a sharp and penetrating frost in places. During tomorrow, the scattered snow showers in the morning will tend to die out and many places will become dry by the afternoon, with some sunshine. Temperatures are only expected to reach a high of 2 centigrade, 36 Fahrenheit, and even though the very strong northwest winds will ease during the day, it'll feel bitterly cold. Now the summary.